High Commander Zewextal's crystalline antennae vibrated with anxiety as she reviewed the incoming transport's manifest for the 100th time. The Galactic Defense Academy had hosted warriors from over 300 species across the known universe, but never before had they accepted recruits from a Death World classification planet. High Commander, the human transport has entered our atmosphere, announced Lieutenant Krillvor, his translucent scales shifting from blue to green with nervous energy. Zewextal straightened her ceremonial armor, the iridescent plates catching the light of their binary suns. Very well. Have the medical team standing by. These humans will need time to adjust to our 1.8 gravity. The massive transport ship descended through the purple clouds, its hull gleaming with atmospheric entry heat. As it touched down on the reinforced landing pad, Zewextal noticed something odd, the ship's suspension barely compressed. Either the humans were remarkably light, or the transport's doors hissed open. What emerged defied all expectations. First came Instructor Ramirez, a human female who, according to the files, stood at what they considered an average height of 5 feet 8 inches. She wore standard-issue training gear and carried a pack that, according to Zewextal's instruments, weighed as much as a juvenile Chronaxian battle beast. Behind her, 40 human recruits marched out in perfect formation, each carrying similar loads. Not one showed signs of gravitational distress. Not one stumbled or struggled. Permission to begin immediate training exercises, High Commander. Ramirez's voice carried across the landing pad with surprising authority. Zewextal's universal translator must be malfunctioning. Surely you'd prefer to rest and acclimate. Recruits. Ramirez's voice cut through the air like a plasma blade. Welcome to your new home. Drop and give me 200. To Zewextal's horror, all 40 humans immediately dropped to the ground and began performing what their files called push-ups, repeatedly lowering and raising their entire body weight plus their packs in the heightened gravity. Lieutenant, Zewextal whispered, are you recording this? Krillvor's scales had shifted to pure white, a sign of extreme distress. Yes, High Commander, though I doubt anyone will believe it. 147. 148. The humans counted in unison, their voices barely strained. Some were smiling. High Commander, interrupted the facility's AI through their neural link, the landing pad structural integrity sensors are registering rhythmic impacts equivalent to small seismic events. The humans finished their push-ups and jumped to their feet, jumped, in 1.8 gravity, as Ramirez paced before them. This is the Galactic Defense Academy's elite training facility, she announced. But I promise you this, by the time we're done here, they'll be rewriting their definition of elite. The humans responded with a unified roar that set off proximity alarms across 3 sectors. Lieutenant, Zewextal managed, watching as Ramirez led her troops in what they called jumping jacks, the impacts now registering on seismographs across the continent, send a priority message to engineering. Tell them to reinforce everything. Already done, High Commander. They asked if this was some kind of joke. A human recruit dropped their water container. Instead of struggling against the gravity, they simply performed what their files called a squat, a movement that should have shattered their leg bones, retrieved it, and rejoined the exercises without breaking rhythm. No joke, Lieutenant. And send another message to the medical bay. Tell them to update their understanding of bipedal species' physical limitations. Everything we thought we knew is wrong. As if to emphasize her point, Ramirez called out, all right, warm-up's over. 5-mile run to the mess hall. Last one there does another 200. The humans took off at a speed that would have qualified as a sprint for most species, their heavy packs bouncing against their backs, some still engaging in casual conversation as they ran. Zewextal's antennae drooped. This was just their arrival. Just their warm-up. Just their first day. Lieutenant, she said quietly, I believe we may need to reconsider our position as the galaxy's premier military training facility. A distant chorus of human voices carried across the complex as they sang something about blood upon the risers, their thunderous footfalls setting off car alarms in the civilian sector 2 miles away. The galaxy, Zhuangxtao realized, was not ready for humans. She wasn't sure it ever would be. Impossible, muttered Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jack, his third eye twitching as he reviewed the environmental readings. The Crucible Canyon's conditions are lethal to 98% of known species. High Commander Zhuangxtao stood beside him in the observation tower, watching the human recruits prepare for their first survival training exercise. 2 weeks had passed since their arrival, and they had already broken 17 unbreakable training records. The canyon floor registers at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, Jack continued, his tentacles writhing in distress. The air contains toxic levels of sulfur dioxide, and the radiation levels. Are they aware of these conditions? Krilvor asked from his monitoring station. Instructor Ramirez's voice crackled through the command center speakers, answering his question. All right recruits, today's little nature walk might be a bit warm. Consider it a lovely summer day in Death Valley. Standard gear, plus environment suits. The humans checked their equipment with practiced efficiency. Several were grinning. They're joking about it. Krilvor's scales shifted through a rainbow of confused colors. Instructor Ramirez, Zhuangxtao intervened through the communication system. Perhaps we should begin with something less. Begin. Ramirez's command sent the recruits sprinting into the canyon's maw. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as 40 humans navigated terrain that even their most advanced environmental suits struggled to withstand. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Look at their form, Lieutenant Commander Pax Ree, the Academy's combat instructor, commented. They're using the terrain features to their advantage, establishing comm checkpoints, setting up safety lines for the steeper sections. This isn't just endurance, this is tactical adaptation. A recruit named Jackson took point, calling out obstacles and environmental hazards. Behind him, Torres and Singh carried extra water supplies, distributing them during brief tactical pauses. Another recruit, Yoshida, had somehow rigged their environment suit to provide cooling for 2 others when their systems showed strain. They're cooperating, Jack observed. Most species become severely individualistic under extreme stress. Negative, Pax Ree corrected. They're not just cooperating. They're getting stronger. Indeed, as the hours passed, the humans seemed to find their rhythm. They began calling out challenges to each other, turning the lethal obstacle course into some sort of competition. Hey Williams, they heard through the comms. Bet you can't cross that lava flow in under 30 seconds. You're on, Patel. Loser carries winner's pack tomorrow. Zhuangxtao watched as 2 humans treated a river of molten rock like some sort of sporting event, using their environment suits and natural terrain in ways the equipment manufacturers had never intended. Sir, Krilvor called out, his scales now a solid white of disbelief, they've reached the halfway point. Their vital signs are elevated. Casualties? Jack asked, already moving toward the emergency response controls. No, sir. They're singing. Through the observation cameras, they watched as 40 humans, trudging through conditions that would kill most species in minutes, began a thunderous rendition of something they called a cadence. The canyon's natural acoustics carried their voices for miles. I don't understand, Jack admitted, all 3 eyes fixed on his medical readings. Their core temperatures should be lethal. Their muscles should be failing. The radiation alone. Look. Pax Ree pointed to a new development. 2 recruits had fallen behind slightly. Instead of abandoning them, 3 others dropped back, redistributed their gear, and formed a tight formation to share their suit resources. Within minutes, they had caught up to the main group, stronger together than they were alone. Instructor Ramirez, Zhuangxtao called through the comm, your recruits have already exceeded all previous survival records. Perhaps it's time to Pick up the pace, you lazy larvae. Ramirez's voice boomed through the canyon. My grandmother could crawl through here faster, and she's been dead for 20 years. Last one to the extraction point runs it again blindfolded. The humans somehow accelerated. High Commander, Krilvor reported, his voice faint. They're singing again. Something about the ground being soaked with the blood of their enemies. Zyxtal watched as 40 humans, moving through hell itself, treated the whole experience like a pleasant group excursion. They were rewriting every survival manual in the Academy's database, destroying centuries of established biological limitations, and they were doing it with smiles on their faces. Dr. Jeck, she said quietly, I believe we need to completely reassess our understanding of what constitutes impossible conditions. Already done, High Commander, the medical officer replied, his tentacles now completely still in shock. Though I doubt anyone will believe these readings. As the humans approached the extraction point, hours ahead of schedule, Instructor Ramirez's voice crackled through once more, not bad for a warm-up. Tomorrow we'll do it with full packs. The aliens watched as 40 humans cheered, actually cheered, at the prospect of repeating this lethal challenge with additional weight. Send a message to the Galactic Council, Zyxtal ordered. Tell them we need to create a new classification for environmental hazards. Everything we considered unsurvivable is apparently human recreational activity. The combat training arena's reinforced walls vibrated with impacts that should have been impossible. Lieutenant Commander Paxri's upper appendages trembled as he watched the security feeds, his species equivalent of a cold sweat coating his exoskeleton. They're not even using the safety fields, he whispered to High Commander Zyxtal. We should stop this. Below, 40 human recruits engaged in what they called hand-to-hand combat practice. To the alien observers, it looked more like an orchestrated demolition of both the facility and basic physics. Recruit Sullivan. Instructor Ramirez's voice cut through the chaos. What did I tell you about pulling your punches? This isn't a dance class. Sullivan, a human female who stood barely over 5 feet tall, nodded and proceeded to demonstrate what an unpulled punch looked like. Her opponent, a human male twice her size named Petrov, went airborne. Better. Ramirez called out as Petrov executed a perfect landing roll and sprang back into the fight, grinning. Now show me that new combination we worked on. High Commander, the facility's AI interrupted, its artificial voice carrying a note of concern. The arena's structural integrity is at 75% and declining. The impact absorption systems were not designed for this. This was 40 humans engaged in what they claimed was practice combat. They moved with a speed and precision that made the Academy's combat instructors look like beginners. Every impact carried enough force to register on the facility's seismic sensors. Look at their technique, Paxri marveled, professional interest temporarily overriding his horror. They're combining fighting styles that should be incompatible. That recruit there, Martinez, just seamlessly transitioned from what they call judo, to Muay Thai, to something that violates several laws of physics. A new sound drew their attention, laughter. The humans were enjoying themselves. Sir, Krilvor reported from his monitoring station, scales cycling through patterns of disbelief, I'm detecting elevated endorphin levels across all recruits. They're having fun. Fun, Zyxtal repeated the word as if it were in an alien language. They consider this fun. Below, a recruit named Thompson had somehow turned a defensive maneuver into an improvised aerial technique that sent 3 training drones into early retirement. The other humans immediately began offering suggestions on how to make the move more efficient. Alright, change partners. Ramirez commanded. Remember, in real combat, you might face opponents 3 times your size with twice as many limbs. Adapt. Overcome. Try not to break too many walls this time. The humans shuffled partners with enthusiasm that made the medical staff wince. A recruit named Patel, who had been demonstrating devastating joint locks, now faced off against Anderson, who specialized in what they called wrestling. The resulting combination of techniques sent shockwaves through the observation deck. "Commander," the AI interrupted again, "the combat analysis systems are requesting a syntax update. They cannot process what they're observing within current parameters." ZYXTAL watched as the humans began incorporating the environment into their fighting styles. They used walls as launch points, turned the arena's support pillars into improvised weapons, and treated gravity more like a suggestion than a law. "Do you see what I see?" Paxri asked, pointing to a group in the corner. Several recruits had paused their sparring to teach others their techniques, sharing knowledge that would have been closely guarded secrets in most military cultures. "They're making each other stronger," ZYXTAL realized. "Every time one of them learns something new, they immediately share it. They're evolving their combat capabilities in real time." The facility shook as Sullivan and Petrov demonstrated their newly perfected combination move. A support beam groaned. "Should we intervene?" Krilvor asked, his scales now a solid white of panic. "Negative," ZYXTAL replied, though she couldn't keep her antennae from vibrating. "This is their light practice session. I'm more concerned about what they consider actual combat training." As if on cue, Instructor Ramirez's voice boomed through the arena, "Good warm-up, recruits. Now let's add some environmental hazards and see what you can really do." The humans cheered, actually cheered, as the arena's environmental controls activated, introducing extreme heat, variable gravity, and artificial weather conditions. Rather than retreating from these new challenges, they adapted instantly, turning each new obstacle into an advantage. "Update all combat training protocols," ZYXTAL ordered. "Everything we considered advanced techniques. Label it as basic. Everything we thought impossible. Mark it as standard human practice methods. And what should we label as advanced?" Paxri asked, watching as the humans began incorporating the artificial weather into their combat styles. A thunderous crash drew their attention as Thompson demonstrated his improved aerial technique, now with added electromagnetic interference. "I don't think we have a classification for what these humans consider advanced," ZYXTAL admitted. "And honestly, Commander, I'm not sure I want to find out." Head psychologist Dr. Nxvari's tentacle fingers drummed nervously on her datapad as she observed the morning's training session. After 3 months of studying human training methods, she was still struggling to update her species' understanding of psychological limits. "They call this team building," she explained to High Commander ZYXTAL, gesturing at the scene below. 40 humans trudged through knee-deep mud carrying logs that weighed as much as small transport vehicles. The exercise would have been remarkable enough on its own, but it was their method that fascinated Dr. Nxvari. "Watch how they respond to fatigue," she pointed as a recruit named Harrison began to slow. Immediately, the others adjusted their pace, not to leave him behind, but to match him. Then something extraordinary happened. "You've got this, Harrison," called out Rodriguez, his own muscles trembling under the strain. "Remember why you're here. Remember your sister." Harrison's posture straightened, his pace quickened. The entire group seemed to draw energy from his renewal. "Fascinating," Dr. Nxvari's spots glowed with excitement. "They're not just encouraging him, they're connecting the physical challenge to his personal motivation. They're transcending physical limitations through psychological reinforcement. Together." Instructor Ramirez's voice boomed across the training ground. "You're only as strong as your weakest link. Make your weakness into strength." The humans responded with a thunderous chant that sent several native species scurrying for cover. Dr. Nxvari's translation software struggled to keep up with the lyrics, something about rising from ashes and becoming unstoppable. "High Commander," Lieutenant Krilvor called from his monitoring station, "their endorphin levels are spiking again. They're experiencing joy." "Joy," ZYXTAL repeated, watching as 40 humans transformed what should have been a grueling ordeal into something that resembled a celebration. during an exercise designed to break their spirits. Dr. Nxvari's tentacles curled with excitement. That's just it, Commander. They don't view these challenges as punishment. Watch this. Below, Instructor Ramirez had introduced a new element. Obstacle course, she announced. Full gear, full speed, in the dark. Last team through does it again with blindfolds. The humans cheered. Actually cheered. They're turning adversity into opportunity, Dr. Nxvari explained. Every challenge we throw at them becomes a chance to prove something, to themselves and each other. The lights went out. In the darkness, 40 humans navigated a course that would have been lethal with full visibility. Instead of splitting up or competing, they formed chains, calling out obstacles to each other, turning their individual strengths into collective power. Listen, Krilvor said, his scales shifting to a deep blue of wonder. Through the darkness came singing. 40 voices united in what they called a motivation cadence, the words echoing off the facility's walls. Through the dark and through the pain, warriors rise to fight again. They're creating light shows, one of the technical officers reported, baffled. The humans had somehow turned their night vision gear into improvised signal systems, coordinating their movements through patterns of light that resembled dance more than military maneuvers. Stop! Instructor Ramirez called suddenly. Sullivan's down. Dr. Nxvari leaned forward, expecting the exercise to halt. Instead, she watched in amazement as the humans transformed again. Without hesitation, 4 recruits formed a protective circle around their fallen comrade. 3 others created a human chain to guide the medic through the darkness. The remaining teams adjusted their formations instantly, turning the rescue into part of their challenge. They're not just adapting, Dr. Nxvari whispered. They're evolving. Every obstacle we present becomes a catalyst for growth. Their minds simply refuse to accept limitation. Sullivan was back on her feet within minutes, her team having turned the incident into an impromptu rescue drill. The humans emerged from the course not just successful, but stronger, more unified. Again, they shouted as the lights came back on. Harder this time. Update the psychological evaluation protocols, Zyxtal ordered. Everything we considered breaking points. Label them as human motivation triggers. Everything we thought would induce trauma. Mark it as team-building opportunities. Dr. Nxvari's spots pulsed with academic excitement. And what should we classify as actual psychological stress tests? Below, the humans had begun a new exercise, this time voluntarily wearing blindfolds while carrying increased loads. Dr. Zyxtal replied, watching as 40 humans turned sensory deprivation into a trust-building game, I'm beginning to think our entire understanding of psychological limits needs to be rewritten. These humans, they don't break. They transform. The Galactic Defense Academy's Grand Amphitheater, built to host delegations from 1,000 worlds, buzzed with nervous energy. High Commander Zyxtal stood at the podium, her crystalline antennae vibrating with what she now recognized as excitement rather than fear. 6 months had passed since the humans' arrival. 6 months that had transformed not just 40 recruits, but the entire concept of military training across the galaxy. The graduation ceremony is typically a formal affair, Zyxtal announced to the assembled dignitaries from across the galaxy. But these graduates have redefined our understanding of formality. As if on cue, the ground began to tremble. The alien observers shifted nervously in their seats. They'd all heard rumors about the humans. Today, they would witness the truth. The 40 human recruits appeared, but not by walking through the doors. They rappelled from the ceiling, scaled the walls, and emerged from concealed positions that shouldn't have been accessible. Each movement was precise, coordinated, powerful. By the void, whispered a Centaurian ambassador, all 4 eyes wide. The stories were true. Instructor Ramirez stood at attention as her recruits assembled in formation. 6 months ago, they had been impressive. Now, they were legendary. Demonstrate, she commanded simply. What followed defied explanation. The humans moved through combat forms that merged strength and grace, power and precision. They demonstrated rescue techniques in full environmental gear, treating the Academy's impossible obstacle course like a light morning walk. Note, ZYXTAL addressed the stunned audience, that they are currently operating in triple standard gravity. The demonstration continued. Sullivan and Petrov, once training partners, now moved like twin stars locked in a deadly dance, their combat techniques blending dozens of fighting styles into something entirely new. Harrison led a team through a crisis response scenario that had been designed to be unwinnable. They completed it in record time. What you're witnessing, ZYXTAL continued, is not just physical prowess. These humans have fundamentally changed our understanding of potential itself. The recruits moved into their final demonstration. Working as one unit, they tackled challenges that would have been considered lethal 6 months ago. They turned environmental hazards into advantages, used tactical problems as opportunities, and transformed individual limitations into group strengths. They don't just overcome obstacles, Dr. NX commented from her observation post, her spots glowing with academic excitement. They transcend them. The demonstration reached its climax as all 40 humans synchronized in a display of power that sent seismic sensors into overload. They weren't just showing off their capabilities, they were announcing humanity's arrival on the galactic stage. As the dust settled, Instructor Ramirez stepped forward. Graduates, attention. 40 humans snapped to perfect formation, their presence filling the massive amphitheater with an energy that made the alien observers lean back in their seats. High Commander, Ramirez addressed ZYXTAL, I present to you the first human class of the Galactic Defense Academy. Though, she allowed herself a small smile, I believe we've made some modifications to your curriculum. ZYXTAL stepped forward to address the graduates. When you arrived 6 months ago, we thought we were teaching you. Instead, you have taught us. You have shown us that our limitations were self-imposed. That our boundaries were artificial. That what we considered impossible was merely unopposed. She turned to address the assembled galactic representatives. These humans are not just graduates. They are revolutionaries. They have transformed our understanding of potential, redefined our concept of possible, and shown us that the greatest barriers exist only in our minds. The humans stood at attention, their bearing proud but not arrogant. They had not come to conquer, but to elevate. Not to dominate, but to inspire. As of today, ZYXTAL announced, all Galactic Defense Academy protocols are being rewritten. What we once considered advanced will be basic. What we thought impossible will be standard. And what these humans consider challenging. She paused, her antennae trembling. Well, we're still trying to figure that out. The ceremony concluded not with traditional formal procedures, but with the humans' preferred method, a demonstration of what they called celebratory PT. As 40 graduates turned the Academy's gravity-enhanced training field into something resembling a festival ground, the alien observers finally understood. They had not just trained warriors. They had witnessed the emergence of a new standard. A human standard. Remember this day, ZYXTAL addressed the departing dignitaries. Remember when you first realized that the impossible was just waiting for humans to arrive. In the background, 40 graduates began planning their light cool-down exercise, a 100-mile run through terrain that would have qualified as a death zone 6 months ago. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, ZYXTAL realized, was exactly what it needed.